Welcome to Player Profiler Primetime News on Player Profiler Now. I'm your host, Mike Lindberg, and as always, joined by one and only Coach Retzlaff, bringing you all the latest insights, updates from the NFL playoffs and the fantasy world, whether it's breaking down standout performances, rookies like Jayden Daniels, deep diving into the drama of the playoff matchups. We've got you covered today, and we'll break down the big wins, the shocking upsets, and the player performances that will shape our fantasy decisions for DFS matchups coming up and, settling into this offseason. So, Jeremiah, let's get into it, buddy. Well, if I ever saw rookie power this weekend, it was Jayden Daniels and the Commanders, and they came in and they stunned the Lions in that thrilling playoff upset, 45-31. Jeremiah, what's your take on this one?
Beautiful, 45-31. The Lions just could not keep up. They could not push tempo. They actually found a team that matched their energy. Jayden Daniels is entering Dynasty Superflex 101 conversation in startups. It isn't disrespectful at all to Lamar or Josh Allen, both respective MVPs in their own rights. Rather, it is proper respect to the talent of Jayden Daniels. Cool, calm, collected. It didn't even seem like Daniels had a pulse. He was so relaxed and in the zone. Daniels was 22 of 31 for 299 yards, just missed 300. He had a clean sheet for turnovers, 0 sacks taken, no interceptions or fumbles. Jared Goff, though, he goes 23 of 40, 313 passing yards. This sounds good up until you see the turnover ratio, 3 interceptions to the 1 touchdown pass, as well as a lost fumble for Jared Goff. Throw in Jameson Williams chucked up an interception as well for the Lions when they were down 10 points in a crucial moment of the game. The numbers look very good for Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Gibbs goes for 14 carries. And he had the 2 touchdowns. He had 6 receptions for 70 yards, 11 targets. Gibbs is entering the 101 discussion in single quarterback leagues. You have Barkley, Jamar Chase. Why not Jahmyr Gibbs? Gibbs good for 35.5 fantasy points. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 8 for 137, 21.7 fantasy points. Now, Diami Brown had 6 for 98, 15.8 fantasy points. Amon-Ra was the wide receiver 3 in 2024. Amon-Ra has won career-wise, right? But Diami Brown wins the day as his team moves on. Amon-Ra always talks about and shades other wideouts who were drafted ahead of him, namely, one of them, particularly, Diami Brown of the Commanders. This was sweet revenge for Diami Brown. It takes nothing away from St. Brown as he will be a first-round pick in drafts next year, but a small serving of humble pie came his way. Terry McLaurin, 4 catches, 87 yards, a touchdown, 18.7 fantasy points. McLaurin is set for the rest of his career. I see late-stage Mike Evans as McLaurin's career arc. He will be in his age 29 to 30 season next year. It's remarkable how long Mike Evans has been in the league to Terry McLaurin, but that just shows you how much older McLaurin was when he started his NFL career. But to me, you're going to get the next few years of Terry McLaurin. I am not scared to buy Terry McLaurin in Dynasty. What is scary about this Commanders team, though, is they have plenty of cap space and will be able to bring in a complimentary wideout either in the draft or free agency. And this won't be some slouch. It'll be a supreme talent. Players will want to join Washington as well to play with Jayden Daniels. So that's another thing that's happening from a recruitment standpoint. The calling card, you already saw in the offseason, Brandon Ayuk for Jayden Daniels. I know they're buddies, but you get the point. There's going to be players who want to ball with Jayden Daniels. Add in, you have Ben Sinnott. He's going to blossom, and the makings of the Commanders' future look very bright. Also, they will have a second-place schedule next year. As you recall, the Eagles took the division. Zach Ertz has really helped Dallas Goedert, Trey McBride, so why not do it here with Ben Sinnott? The future looks bright. Other relevant notes for this game, Jameson Williams, he had a 61-yard rushing touchdown. He took it to the house on a big run. He also threw a back-breaking interception while the Lions were down 10. Ben Johnson gets flacked for part of not keeping up with the Washington Commanders, but he drew up a very good play with Jameson Williams there. Sam LaPorta went 6 for 51 with a touchdown. Sam LaPorta's dynasty value has recovered remarkably year 2 down the stretch, and I'll speak a little bit more to him being bullish there. Mike, what can you tell us about the Chiefs? Patrick Mahomes, Kelsey, a shine as Hunt emerges in a playoff win, propping them to the AFC Championship.
Yeah, 23-14, that divisional win over the Texans. I think that, Mahomes delivered a steady performance, throwing for 177 yards and a touchdown. He maintains, though, his perfect 7-0 divisional playoff record. Fantasy gamers who had Mahomes in their lineups were treated to some solid production, but, his report with Travis Kelsey, that is the one that we need to highlight here, especially in the playoff stretch here. He finished 117 yards and a touchdown on 7 catches. Kelsey continues to be the fantasy staple, proving once again that he can be counted on for elite production when it matters most. His performance also saw him surpass Jerry Rice for the most postseason touchdowns in NFL history, adding another layer to his fantasy value that's always, been super steady throughout his career. Mahomes and Kelsey were the focal points of the offense. We know that, and it's going to be a lot of that, I think, this week as they face the Bills coming up, and what's going to be just an awesome game. But moving on to the rookie wide receiver, Xavier Worthy, he proved to be an intriguing secondary option. Worthy held in 5 catches, 45 yards, positioning himself as a reliable target in deep fantasy formats. While wasn't the primary focus, his ability to step up in this playoff setting suggests that he could see more involvement in future matchups this week. In general, against the Bills, they're going to need, I think, some firepower here to keep up with that high-flying Bills offense that seemed to be, starting to come into its own lately. That running game of the Bills is going to be really hard to stop, and we'll have to see how that goes. And Xavier Worthy is going to be relied on here. His consistency could make him a useful asset for fantasy gamers looking for a value play this week in DFS contests. So look for Worthy. Only 4 teams here left in the playoffs, so you're playing in these big tournament situations. You're looking for a boom or bust play. So looking at Xavier Worthy this week to maybe step up here. The Chiefs backfield saw some shakeups as well. Kareem Hunt emerging as a significant contributor. He finished with 44 yards on 8 carries, including that key touchdown and several important runs to seal the victory. Meanwhile, Isaiah Pacheco, who started the game, he struggled with just 5 carries, 18 yards. Hunt's resurgence could make him a viable fantasy option, especially if Pacheco's inconsistency persists. So this AFC Championship game, whether against the Bills here, both these defenses are playing great. So I think they're going to have to really stop the run, making Hunt a potential sleeper this week. So we'll have to see what happens. Looking ahead, Travis Kelsey will remain the top tier option for fantasy owners looking to play DFS or any sort of tournament play this week. You're looking at Travis Kelsey as, the tight end to be owned here. Both the Bills and the Chiefs, are ranking against the lower half in the league against the tight end. So this could be a high fly in tight end situation for both sides of the ball. And then obviously with the backfield there, I'm looking at, Kareem Hunt, who's been looking a bit more fresh and solid. So I'm not convinced Pacheco has been fully recovered from that injury here. So shout out Toronto. Dave, what up, buddy?
What's up, man?
Hopefully you're not freezing your balls off like I am here over in Winnipeg. It's minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit right now where I am. How you feeling over there, Jeremiah?
I am actually feeling really good. It's funny enough, I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I'm from upstate New York. So I know cold, I know the extreme weather. So it's just kind of funny when I'm down here. Anytime I'm worried, I just got to think, okay, it's 10, 15 degrees colder back home, or even worse where you are in Canada. But I actually just got an alert through my phone, 2-hour delay for school tomorrow. So your boy is feeling great. So I love seeing that. We'll see what we get weather-wise, but absolutely pumped like that. When you're a teacher, you just look forward to stuff like that. And to your point, it'll be interesting to see, Mike, what happens with the Bills. I really think they're going to push tempo next week against the Chiefs, and we will see if the Chiefs can keep up with that tempo being pushed. I actually see the same thing being a conundrum for the Eagles should the Commanders push them. Now, segueing over, let's talk about the Rams versus the Eagles. Much like the win over the Packers, the Eagles slow dripped a victory over the Rams, 28-22. They always kind of seemed in control, but they never put away the Rams. Jalen Hurts, a terrible day passing, 15 of 20. So, yes, the completions were there, but only 128 yards, 0 touchdown passes. Hurts did have that opening drive, 44-yard touchdown. Hurts' numbers were buoyed by his 7 rushes, 7 yards, and of course, that spoken to touchdown. Hurts did take 7 sacks for 63 yards. The Rams the prior week had 9 sacks against Sam Darnold, which Mike will allude to later for your bearish segment. So they really did stay on the Rams on Jalen Hurts. Hurts at one point did get hurt on his lower body, so he was definitely less mobile in the pocket as the game wore on. It did seem like Hurts had very little pocket awareness. One example is the safety that Jalen Hurts took. You got to get rid of the ball. Matthew Stafford, 26 of 44, a typical Stafford type of game, 324 yards. He was not that accurate, though, with a 47.7 quarterback rating. So you get the yards, and Stafford did have 2 touchdown passes. He's usually good for 2. Went to Tyler Higbee and Colby Parkinson. Can you remember preseason talking about Colby Parkinson, hoping he would become a thing? It just never materialized. It's just funny, this game that we play all off season, we'll be talking best ball, dynasty stock up and down, these rookie drafts. There'll be players that we collectively forget that, oh yeah, we really were hoping to have this peculiar stance on them late and reap profits. And it's kind of easy to just kind of forget about Colby Parkinson. Puka Nacua did hit his over-under for receiving yards as he went 6 for 97 on 14 targets. Kyron Williams, a respectable 19 carries for 106 rushing yards. His dynasty value is something worth checking in on. Can you get him for a value? You don't have to overpay for him. The people who have him have a little bit of an endowment effect of entry point, discovery, keeping and having Kyron through being low stock all the way up. So it'll be interesting to see how that breaks down. Blake Corum really didn't break through at all this season. Cooper Kupp went 5 for 61. It'll be interesting to see if Cooper Kupp is done with the Rams. What will Cooper Kupp's value be as a wide receiver 2? There's plenty of teams who will be looking out for a wide receiver 2, especially contenders, maybe the Washington Commanders. Saquon Barkley was the MVP of the day, 205 rushing yards, 26 carries, 2 touchdowns. Barkley added 4 for 27 in the passing game, good for 39.2 fantasy points. So essentially a 40 burger. You can eat good with that, right? The Eagles have a strange dichotomy where they're dominant and threatening with Hurts and Saquon in the running game, yet Hurts has struggled so much with passing. Dallas Goedert led with 4 catches for 56 yards. That just doesn't sound right. A.J. Brown comes away with 2 for 14 yards. It might just have to be more self-help books for A.J. Brown, and Jalen Hurts might need to read How to Win Friends and Influence People for his boy, A.J. Brown, get him back in the fold. Devonta Smith, same thing, 4 catches, 21 yards. Overall, my takeaway, 20 pass attempts just isn't going to cut it. I'm personally ready to sell Jalen Hurts in Dynasty. I'll be happy to hold if I don't get the offer I want, right? You don't just sell for anything. But Hurts seems to be hitting a wall developmentally or regressing somehow that may end up affecting his real-life status as the franchise quarterback. I know it sounds crazy now since the Eagles are winning, but his lack of passing efficiency looks like it could be a problem that prevents the Eagles from winning it all. We talk all season, what are the weaknesses that hit a team? They really manifest themselves when you're playing the best. And if the Eagles get pushed on tempo and have to get into a shootout into throw mode, I'm not so sure we can get the Jalen Hurts that traded blows with the Kansas City Chiefs back in the Super Bowl. It's a different Jalen Hurts, noticeably, as you're watching. Now, Mike, can you tell us, Bills, Ravens, maybe the game of the week? We did our combat zone. We had MVP, battles, discussions. It came right down to the wire. Tell us about the Bills and
Yeah, I mean, that game was nothing short of, spectacular, really. Like, right down to the wire. Josh Allen was his usual dual threat self, rushing for 2 touchdowns while throwing for only 127 yards. The weather wasn't great there, obviously, and fantasy gamers who had Allen in their lineups were rewarded with his ability to score on the ground, cementing his status, as that top option and maybe whispering MVP here. I mean, he was the guy that got it done. Obviously, Lamar played his best he could. His team kind of let him down, his receivers and stuff like that. So we'll get into that there. Mark Andrews, who was unfortunately will be remembered for his 2 costly mistakes in the final moments of the game. Andrews, typically a reliable fantasy option, made a huge blunder when he fumbled that catch from Lamar Jackson that was recovered by Buffalo, giving the Bills a crucial opportunity to extend their lead. Then the turnover, that was a massive blow, but it didn't end there. We know that. We watched the game, the Ravens trailing by just 3. Minute 33 left. He dropped the 2-point conversion to tie the game. That was, just heartbreaking for, the Ravens, who were really, really nipping at their heels, and they were starting to come around after a slow start there. So Lamar Jackson, his performance, it was okay. He threw for 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, including that 16-yard score to Rashad Bateman. His 2 turnovers, however, that interception and a fumble, kept them from capitalizing on their opportunities. And Jackson's, his inconsistency in postseason, they continue to haunt him now with a 3-5 record in playoff games. Despite Andrews' late game failures, Jackson's performance still showcases his ability to move the ball, making him, a very coveted dynasty asset, as we talked about a couple weeks ago on the show there, Jeremiah. Now, looking ahead to the AFC Championship game, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, we can't ask for anything more. It's in Arrowhead. It's going to be an amazing situation, a good atmosphere. I can't wait for this game, and I can't wait to get a lineup set in that fast draft. That app is just next level. We are growing that platform. So let's get a message here from the Podfather, Jeremiah, and get some more explanation on our fast draft.
Oh, I see all this mock draft information out there. Oh, this mock, that mock. Hey, what about a real actual fantasy game? The Flex 4 game on Fast Draft, draftfaster.com, is open. You draft 6 running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. The top 4 enter your lineup every week. It's that easy. It's that simple. Drafts take 5 minutes. There's a $50,000 prize pool. It's $15,000 to first. It's just a $5 entry. And the best part, no rake. No rake whatsoever on Fast Draft. The first 2025 Best Ball contest to open in the world is ready for you to draft up to 150 teams. Draftfaster.com, draftfaster.com. Start playing Best Ball for real.
Hey, you got to love it. Fast draft. You want to go in there, get opportunity. This is entry point on some tournaments that are only going to grow. And there's only going to be an increase in the amount of drafts and tournaments that you have. So many options at your fingertips when you're playing DFS, when you're playing best ball. So it's just another fun way, a gamification of fantasy football in another unique, creative way. Very fun, easy user interface experience as well. And shout out to Toronto Dave, Bills Mafia, my Uncle Jerry I talked about a couple weeks ago. He's in his 80s. He's very happy. I got some family members who are diehard Bills fans. I would love for the Bills to get one. I know, Mike, that would be to your chagrin. We'll see if they get a 3P. It's very interesting because you have history, the opportunity. Patrick Mahomes, can he pull off a 3P? It would be the only team to ever do it. The closest, from what I can recall, it was the 49ers, who had back-to-back and had a third run interrupted by the Giants. And then the Packers had the Super Bowl era started 1 year sooner. The Packers' 2 Super Bowls piggybacked a start of a 3-peat for them. So the Packers were actually very close from doing it from the jump. But if Mahomes gets 3 in a row, that would be something that Tom Brady never did. So we will see there. And of course, with Josh Allen, you have to slay the dragon, and we'll see if he can do that. Now we're going to segue over to, we're bullish, we're bearish. We got different players we're up and down on. Let's see who we've got this week.
0-1. Woo!
All right, I get the pleasure of being bullish this week. There is something psychologically, the dopamine effect of seeing the green check mark and arrow up versus shorting the market. And same thing for players. You know, you get that red X, you're like, oh no, there's something different about it. So psychologically, I love this bullish nature. Again, to be bullish this week. I am bullish on Sam LaPorta. I alluded to him a little bit earlier, heading into year 3. LaPorta ended as the tight end 8. LaPorta with a 112.3 explosive rating, ranked 4th for tight ends. The Lions are filled with explosive rating, and that's part of why they were the number 1 seed in the NFC and had such success on offense this year. LaPorta in 2024, 3rd in deep targets with 9 at the tight end position. At tight end, 5th in red zone targets with 19, 7th in receiving yards and air yards share, 6th in yards after catch with 343. Remember, that has been always Sam LaPorta's calling card. Sammy ball game. Can he get that yak ability? So he still has it. 4th in total tight end touchdowns with 7. And LaPorta, 7th in fantasy points per game with 10.9. LaPorta finished his last 5 of 6 games as a tight end 1. He had 10 total tight end 1 games in 16 games played. Sam LaPorta, sneakily 3rd behind Brock Bowers and Trey McBride in our Player Profiler Tight End Dynasty rankings. At just 24 years old, LaPorta has an excellent career ahead of him. Funny enough, he'll have a bit of a post-hype nature to him due to his first half of 2024. It really burned a lot of people. By the time they moved on, a lot of people had Tucker Kraft, that they were pivoting back and forth with Sam LaPorta when LaPorta struggled early on. Fortunately, though, Sam LaPorta's ADP in 2025 redraft and best ball will drop from that round 3 in 2024, which was way overheated. So I'm very happy to get a proper price point on Sam LaPorta. So for me, Sam LaPorta, stock up, bullish. Mike, who you got for bearish?
Well, I got a guy that a lot of people hung their fantasy championships on because of him, and you know what? It's time to get out on Sam Darnold and heading into next season. I think he's a big time sell, especially in dynasty leagues while his stock is high. Darnold's regular season numbers, they were impressive, throwing for 35 touchdowns, 4,300 yards, 66% completion rate. His ability to handle pressure in critical moments remained a huge concern in the 2 biggest games of his season, a Week 18 showdown against the Lions and in that playoff loss against the Rams. Darnold, he faltered under the spotlight in both primetime matchups. Darnold and the Vikings collapsed, failing to live up to the moment. This inability to perform when it mattered most raises some red flags for me, especially considering his history of struggles in high pressure situations. Another factor influencing my bearish outlook is the system Darnold played in. Kevin O'Connell is known to be the quarterback whisperer, having turned Kirk Cousins into a more efficient quarterback in the system. I believe anyone with an average talent can succeed in O'Connell's offense, and they got JJ McCarthy, who is much better than the average talent. And the system is designed to simplify things and set up success for the quarterback. And I'm thinking that this is going to be a good situation for JJ to get into, and they may need a bridge quarterback to kind of get them into the next season. I think they have that in their system. Daniel Jones is there. So I think towards next season, they're going to keep Daniel Jones, cut loose Sam Darnold, and then Sam Darnold is going to get a gig somewhere. And I just don't think it's going to end in a similar fashion. Given all these factors, I'm looking to sell him while his stock is at his peak right now. His 2024 season looked to be good on paper, but I think I said his success is largely tied to the system and supporting cast around him. He had Justin Jefferson, that is a corner piece, a pinnacle piece to any, team. And, Jordan Addison, they had, TJ Hawkinson. They're going to add a piece there in the draft, I think, with a running back. I'm excited to see what they do in Minnesota with their running situation. JJ McCarthy's up the pipeline here. So look for Sam Darnold to be moving on, and he's going to get a shot somewhere, but I just don't think he's going to be in a situation that is going to have the same weapons around him, the same coaching staff. And for that matter, I think if you can get, what he's worth right now, look to get out of Sam Darnold, because I don't think it's going to be as rosy as it has been now. What are your thoughts on that there, Jer?
I think that's a great call. It's brutal because we were looking at just if he kind of did okay through these games, there was a lot of money to be gained, but a lot of money to be lost for Sam Darnold. Those last two games, the Lions game in week 18, where it had playoff effects because you were going for the number 1 seed, and he just crapped the bed there. And then he did the same thing against the Rams. He took 9 sacks, could not get into any rhythm that game. The score did not reflect. It was not nearly as close, and you never got the feeling that Darnold would steer the ship and take control. The thing about Sam Darnold is we had this impression of him earlier on in the season, and it's like we expanded this accordion out, and there was all this good play just for him to go back to a pumpkin type of a player. And it's just like we wasted effectively a year of our lives. And I really don't think he's ever going to beat the allegations on this. Those last 2 games really showed who he was. And I think the team that goes out and pays him is a sucker. And I hope he gets the bag because I want people to financially do well. But I'm with you, Mike. I'm bearish on Sam Darnold. The beauty is most people who have Sam Darnold on their Superflex rosters got him in a free waiver pickup or next to nothing, off shot for a 4th in the offseason before it was even a thing. You're going to profit or continue to benefit in the event that Sam Darnold gets a job somewhere and you have somebody to at least plug into that second quarterback spot, because we're not naive to say that Sam Darnold, if he is a starter, won't have representative games, but very much bearish to where we thought the trajectory of Darnold was going. It is funny, though. It just makes things so much easier. The clarity on J.J. McCarthy. It was always going to be J.J. McCarthy, but there's no controversy there at all. It makes it so much easier for the separation between Darnold and the Vikings. If anything, though, like you said, Daniel Jones provides a perfect buoy opportunity to grow in Minnesota and maybe get a bag elsewhere, like you say, with Kevin O'Connell. So that's a very astute point. Daniel Jones, a very good pickup. Imagine Daniel Jones throwing to Addison, Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, as you were saying, just a plethora of weapons. And I'm with you. The Vikings, whatever running back they get, I am just wheels up all about it. I just salivate thinking of the players who could end up in Minnesota. So great call there. Bearish, you hate it. But hey, that's the nature of things. 2 weeks like that, and it changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Jeremiah, we need to get into a battle. We skipped the battle last week, so I think it's time to get our viewers back into what we call the combat zone. This is an off-season thing that we're going to keep doing throughout the off-season here. Is we each pick a hot topic in the situation in the fantasy landscape right now, and this week we're going to talk about 2 wide receivers, kind of at different stages of their career, and we're going to talk dynasty right now. Both of them are being talked as top 12 dynasty assets as far as the wide receiver position. And let's get this going here, Jer.
It's go time. It's go time. It's go time. We going up. We go.
So we've got Bullish and Bearish, but now we have our combat zone. Mike has spoken to 2 wide receivers. You might have seen them recently in the wild card game. Ladd McConkey, Nico Collins. Both players really did well. They showed out, and the result for either team did not fall the way for the Chargers. It fell the way for the Houston Texans. Now, of course, a week later, we saw what happened in Kansas City. But just, it's kind of funny how it crystallized, moment in time, these 2 wide receivers on the same field at the same time, and comparatively, They're sort of in the same place. Granted, Nico Collins has been in the league a couple of years, Ladd McConkey going into year 2, but they're in these similar situations where they are thriving. For me, I'm going to take the side of Ladd McConkey. I have a note here going through from Coach's Corner. This is back in July when we did the ADP report for Underdog on the LA Chargers. This is what I had for Ladd McConkey at the time. Going in the 6th round, a 4.39, 40-yard dash, Georgia pedigree. We saw McConkey excel on the highest stage in college. McConkey is getting rave reviews by Justin Herbert. That should have been a hint there. This game can be really easy sometimes. If the guy throwing you the football is singing your praises, it is an excellent sign. So here's some argument for Ladd McConkey. McConkey was the wide receiver 7 in 2024 as a rookie from the jump. McConkey was 3rd in slot snaps, so they move him around the formation. 3rd in receiving yards with 13.46. Pretty impressive for, again, a rookie. This is good for standard and half-point PPR leagues. So getting those yards, getting the touchdowns in those half-point and those standard leagues, very important. It's not all just PPR, the PPR scam that people talk about. McConkey is getting the yards for points. His 91 receptions ranks 11, and his 126 targets were 17th. So the number of targets will go up in 2025. This will be a boost in PPR leagues. So if the targets go up, the 91 reception mark can push and threaten for 100 receptions in 2025. So that's what I'm going to stake a claim on, that McConkey can hit 100. He will keep it 100 in 2025 with 100 receptions. Ladd was 4th in yards per route run, 2.79. 3rd in formation adjusted yards per route run, 2.59. 6th in yards per target, 10.7. Ladd was 3rd in yards per team pass attempt with 2.63. Ladd was 5th in expected points added and 10th in best ball points added with 138.9. 275.6 fantasy points were 7th at the position. We saw a rookie record for Ladd McConkey, 197 yards in the playoffs on wildcard weekend. Give me Ladd McConkey with a stable quarterback who will have added support to take pressure off McConkey, and it's only going to get better. Wheels up, arrow pointing up. When it comes to Nico Collins, Ladd McConkey, give me Ladd McConkey. Mike, what do you got?
Yeah, it's hard for me to battle against Ladd, but I was a bullish on him last week, so you threw me for a loop, and now I have to talk about Nico Collins, another person who I absolutely love as well. But although my love for Ladd and his potential, I'm still higher on Nico heading into next season, especially just in the dynasty realm. The reason boils down to the opportunity and role. Collins has solidified himself as the clear-cut number 1 in Houston, finishing 2024, 68 receptions, 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns, despite dealing with injuries and a lack of supporting talent. With Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, both sidelines, Collins was the focal point for Stroud, and he consistently delivered, including 122-yard performance in the playoffs. With little competition for targets next season, Collins should continue to see a massive share of the Texans' passing game, and he doesn't even need a huge chunk of it to make him super efficient. He's just as an efficient wide receiver, and the higher volume will make him even more reliable option next year. McConkey's emergence as that rookie season was super impressive. He racked up, that 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns, establishing himself as that key part of the Chargers offense. His efficiency, 2.5 yards per route run, strong ability to convert first down, speaks volumes about his long-term potential. However, McConkey's role within that crowded offense potentially that next year could be, up in the air. I think they're going to bring in some talent to hit up the outside. Not saying that person is going to be the alpha in the wide receiver room, but I think it's going to garner some of those red zone targets that Ladd had, and he's going to have to be a little bit more efficient in between the 20s and get some additional targets, which I think is going to be tough for him to do. And I just think that Nico is the undisputed alpha in the Texans. I think McConkey has the potential to be an alpha, but I'm interested to see what they do next year with the competition. So that's kind of where my red flag, stems up from. Not saying that I don't think Ladd has got that potential. I just think that I'm interested to see, and I'm a little bit hesitant about it because of his size. And, he played through some injuries, which showed he was really tough. So that gives me another reason to believe in Ladd as a tough guy and someone who's just going to be resilient. So, but I just want to see what they do next year. And I just think that if you're going to part with some dynasty assets, I'm going to take a guy that, I know is going to be there for the longer term. He signed that long-term deal, and his position's a little bit more stable for me with Nico. And then the Ladd situation, I think he's a great asset. 100% in on Ladd McConkey. I have him on so many dynasty rosters, and can't go wrong there with both those guys. But if I were to choose one, I'd have to choose Nico at this stage.
Well, to chirp on the other side, because we can front run with Ladd McConkey. I stated the case, all for him, but it is worth mentioning these are two players who are just like neck and neck, right? Very difficult to make a wrong choice between the two, and there's arguments for both. If you think about it, though, moment in time, the hamstring injury, I believe it was against the Bills in week 5, Nico Collins was going off before he had that hamstring injury, and he was out until week 11. At that time, that moment in time, this is a fickle game. Remember, in this offseason, those of you at home, Nico Collins, I ran a poll on Profiler NFL. It was Lamb, it was Nico Collins. Who's there for the 101 or the 102? Who do you want, right? If you're drafting. And the poll came out with Nico ahead of CD Lamb. So it is not sacrilegious. And that's something that you can take advantage of if Nico ended up as the wide receiver 14 and people are going to peg him down just a little bit. I think that's an opportunity that you can go out and buy and have an easier opportunity to acquire somebody like Nico Collins, with keeping in mind, we talk about, okay, Jamar Chase, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs. Is it Amon-Ra, CeeDee Lamb, Bijan, who make up that top 6? Nico Collins could absolutely be in that top half of the first round were it not for what happened to him. Now, granted, that's an if, but at the same time, when you're trying to get micro edges, where Nico Collins falls in ADP, if you have that mindset of Nico Collins can be that 102 at full health, then you're getting an absolute steal value-wise at ADP in 2025.
There you have it. Now, Jer, we're about 37 minutes in. Do you want to get into Coach's Corner and Chef's Table to end the show, or what?
Yeah, absolutely. We want to run a little bit on the preview for the NFC and the AFC Championship.
Let's do it, man.
Absolutely. All right, let's coach. So we have the favored Philadelphia Eagles. The Commanders will head to Philadelphia. They're going to take on the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. The Eagles will be the favorites. However, the Commanders are the team that gets hot, that no one wants to see in the playoffs. We see it every year. The Eagles, though, as it sits, 5.5-point favorites. That'll probably hover between 5.5, 6.5, and it'll be tough to get up to that touchdown favorite. Jayden Daniels was QB4 on the season, well worth his second overall pick in the NFL draft behind Caleb Williams. It is now evident that Jayden Daniels, as it sits today, is the better quarterback than Caleb Williams. If you had to redo the draft, Jayden would get the 101. Now we got news about Ben Johnson. It's not over yet for Caleb Johnson, but hey, as it sits today, it's an easy game. Jayden Daniels. Jayden was 4th in fantasy points per dropback, 7th in red zone attempts. So they throw deep in the red zone and don't just benefit from Jayden rushing in tight. 21.5 fantasy points per game was good for 5th at the QB position. For running, 1st in carries with 161, 2nd in red zone carries with 43, 2nd in rushing yards with 51.5, 3rd in rushing touchdowns with 6. And that was 2nd in rushing yards per game at 51.5. He had way more than 51.5 rushing yards. Jayden has been a top 12 quarterback 12 times this year, in 7 of those games as a top 5 quarterback. So that's just rarefied air in territory. And that's why when I talk about Lamar, Josh Allen, Jayden Daniels, it isn't sacrilegious or blasphemous to put Jayden Daniels there. In the 2 games versus the Eagles, Jayden was the QB25 with 14.4 fantasy points. And then he was the QB1 overall in Washington with 36.4 fantasy points. Remember, that was the Kenny Pickett game. Recall in the first matchup, Jayden Daniels, short turnaround, Thursday night game. My theory at the time was that Jayden Daniels was taking the entire week to get right in healing with that rib injury. It was a brutal run out for fantasy as Terry McLaurin got shut down on Thursday Night Football. Kenyon Mitchell. It gave the opening that showed us the Commanders don't have any elite options beyond Terry McLaurin. So when we're talking about what's going to arise for weaknesses in the playoffs, that's something that I've been looking for. If there is something that is a thorn in the Commanders' side, it might be that. For Jalen Hurts, QB7 on the season, he's thrown for less than 200 passing yards in 5 of the last 6 games. Hurts manages through the ground game, but I'm curious to see how Hurts will perform in a game where he's challenged on pace. The Eagles have been able to bleed the clock and wear teams out, running and defense. So if they get down, I expect that to be a weakness that is glaring. So I talk about the Commanders' weakness. That's a weakness that I see. I'll be interested to see how the Eagles respond. The weakness for the Commanders, they lack the weapons beyond Terry McLaurin and not being able to stop Saquon Barkley. That's going to be a key core thing. How do you stop Saquon Barkley? On the other end, the Eagles' problem, how will they engage in throw mode shootouts? For Hurts, recall he was hurt with a concussion in the Week 16 matchup. I expect this game to split between the Eagles going with what they know in the ground game and defense, while the Commanders work to push pace with aggression in tempo and in the air. Now let's move on to Saquon Barkley. He was a 1-2 turn pick and will be in the 101 conversation. I'm projecting Saquon, Jamar Chase, and Jahmyr Gibbs as the top 3. We spoke to Lamb, Amon-Ra, and Bijan in the previous segment. They'll be there for the top half of the draft. Barkley was the RB1, much like Lamar and the Ravens getting Derrick Henry. Saquon has boosted the Eagles to the number 2 seed and offer a weapon outside of Hurts in the backfield. Saquon was first in rushing yards, 2,124. He had a shot at the record, but sat out that Giants game in Week 18. Barkley, first in breakaway runs. We saw him break away last week against the Rams. First in best ball points added, 6th in yards created, 4th in true yards per carry with 5.1. Barkley is the straw that stirs the drink in Philadelphia this year. The Super Bowl run that was led through Hurts and the ascension in the passing game with the addition of A.J. Brown. This Eagle team is built to funnel through Saquon and Hurts in the ground game. It's different. It is remarkable in these big games where the big-time running back is hyped up, though. You'd be surprised how often teams opposing running back puts up a great game. That's where you have Brian Robinson Jr., 2 touchdowns last week, 77 rushing yards. Versus the Lions, 19.7 fantasy points. Austin Eckler had 12.8 fantasy points, 47 yards rushing, 4-4 receiving for 41 yards. So it's a combinatorial effort between combined. I was looking for the right word. Robinson and Eckler to make up what Saquon Barkley can do by himself. Jayden Daniels will funnel the secondary elements of the Commanders' offense. It's really runs through Robinson, Eckler, and Zach Ertz. Daniels has connected lately with Diami Brown, Zacchaeus, but plenty of this offense has funneled through the triangulation of the 3, Robinson, Eckler, and Ertz. Speaking of Zach Ertz was a tight end 7 at age 34. Zach Ertz, 2nd in red zone targets with 21, and 6th in tight end receptions with 68. Before Ben Sinnott rises, Zach Ertz will not be denied. Look for Ertz to play very well in a revenge matchup against his old team, as Jayden Daniels will look for Ertz in the red zone. Clearly, Ertz has been a big safety blanket for Jayden Daniels. Diami Brown, left for dead. He's had 2 back-to-back good performances in the playoffs. This might be something to build off into 2025. Luke McCaffrey hasn't risen at all. Brown, 19.9 fantasy points versus the Bucs, 5 catches, a touchdown, 89 receiving yards. Diami Brown against the Lions, 6 for 98 receiving. So we can't bury the lead on the Commanders. Jayden Daniels doesn't have his magic rookie season without Terry McLaurin's wide receiver 4 outing. The question for the NFC Championship will be, which Terry McLaurin shows up? Terry's Week 11 matchup with Kenyon Mitchell got him just 2 fantasy points. Week 16, McLaurin comes away with 17. In reverse of McLaurin's great season, A.J. Brown fell down as the wide receiver 19. Remember, A.J. Brown was a late first-round pick in drafts in 2025. I attribute this, to Jalen Hurts' regression as a passer and the offense running through Saquon Barkley. Brown isn't suddenly lacking in talent. A.J. Brown, second in explosive rating with a score of 129.6. Brown just so happens to not be an every-week hammer a la Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, or even consistency such as Brian Thomas Jr. So A.J. Brown's teammate, Devonta Smith, presents a nice buy low window in Dynasty. Smith was the wide receiver 27 on the season. I'll be most curious to see Smith and Brown's over-under totals for receptions and yardage this weekend. A.J. Brown had a 64-yard over-under. These drops for receptions have gone down to 4.5 for reception props. These yardages down into the 60s are going to be very tempting for me to hit the over for A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. Lastly, Dallas Goedert, second in yards per route run with 2.59, fifth in yards per target. Goddard's production is so random, it's really difficult to trust him in Dynasty, in redraft, anything that's not best ball or weekly DFS. And even then, that's pushing it. This game has an opening line, Eagles by 5.5. The over-under, 47.5. This tells me it'll fall between the struggle of the Commanders pushing tempo and the Eagles asserting dominance in the run game and trying to live off of their strong defense. What I want to see, though, is Jalen Hurts have to open up the passing game. I want to see the Eagles tested. The Eagles have had 2 games where they coasted versus the Packers and the Rams. I want to see the Week 16 shootout just with Hurts in at quarterback instead of Kenny Pickett. So that's my rundown on the NFC Championship game. Mike, what do you got for the championship game?
Well, I mean, I'm excited about it because, I'm a Chiefs fan and it's setting another stage for a great matchup here. The stakes are high. The Bills, the Chiefs. This actually marks the 4th time since January 2021 that these 2 teams have faced off in the playoffs. The intensity of this contest, I think, is going to be at an all-time high. The Bills, with Josh Allen, they'll be looking to avenge their previous postseason defeats and secure their first trip to the Super Bowl in a very long time, while the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, he aims to get his dynasty still intact and want to win another championship. That three-peat, it's coveted. We know about that. Both teams are coming off impressive wins in that divisional round. So I'm looking at some key situations here to be factors in this game. The focus to me will be on the Bills' rushing attack, which has been dominant in recent weeks. The last meeting with the Chiefs did a solid job on slowing down Buffalo's ground game, limiting them to just 104 yards, 3.4 yards per carry. And I think that this game is going to be very similar going. The Bills, they have a great run game led by Josh Allen, especially in the red zone. James Cook has been exceptional. Many thought headed into this season that he didn't have the chops to be a red zone guy, but we look at, his touchdown progression this year, outstanding. James Cook finished as a top 10 running back, and he has a bright future there, and Ray Davis also looked pretty strong last week, and I think he's carved himself out a role as well as a red zone threat. So 3 red zone threats for the Bills. They're not passing a whole lot in the red zone. We know that, but the Chiefs on the other side, their run game hasn't been, that spectacular. Kareem Hunt, we talked about that in the earlier segment, came in, took over the starting duty after Isaiah Pacheco struggled. And it's looking like a little bit more of a committee there as it's been all year. The Bills defense will need to be strategic when facing Mahomes and that high-powered offense at times. The intriguing aspect will be how much Buffalo and McDermott will opt to blitz in the divisional round. The Bills blitz Lamar on nearly 50% of his dropbacks, their highest rate since 2021. the blitzing of Mahomes will come at risk, though, because, Mahomes gets the ball out early and often. I mean, his offensive line has struggled this year, and they've caused a lot of penalties as well. So I'll be looking to see how, McDermott runs his blitz situation, and looking at that Chiefs O-line, I think a lot is that's going to come down to how much time Mahomes has to make those big plays, and they're going to be having to really blanket Travis Kelce. He's shown that they've been saving him for the playoffs, and with that huge performance that he had last week, I could just see that being the focal point again. The matchup in the trenches will be crucial, particularly with the performance of the Bills' offensive line. That line has been one of the best in the league this season, ranking the 5th fewest in pressures allowed. So that's going to be key for, Kansas City's defense from rattling Josh Allen, who thrives when he's given a clean pocket. The Chiefs had a lot of pressure this week against the Texans. So I'm hoping to see that from a Chiefs fan perspective, to see that happening, because, if the Chiefs are able to pressure Allen, that is a good situation. He hasn't been great when he's seen a lot of pressure, while CJ Stroud was pressured on over half of his dropbacks. If Allen has time to survey the field, it could be a field day for him. So, especially with receiving core that has been spread out this season, you never know who the ball is going to. So it'll be hard for them to really solidify that. So I'm looking at this offensive line on both sides of the ball to see how they both hold up to the pressure. And these quarterbacks, prolific as they are, I think this might be a little bit more of a strategic kind of game back and forth. Obviously, it's going to be a lot of fireworks and some big plays down the line, but I'm looking for those defensive line to make those big plays here in this one. So, loving what I see here. As far as these fantasy prospects here, Travis Kelce's the guy I'll be looking at primarily here. Josh Allen, obviously, his prolificness heading into next season, I think he's still, up there in the top 3 dynasty rankings. Now, Jayden Daniels is going to have to be talked about as a QB 1 overall now at this stage. I know, just seeing how he's been able to produce in the playoffs. I saw some pretty interesting thing on Twitter the other day about how he actually was scouted and prepared himself for these games with the VR and everything, seeing everything in 1.75 times. So interesting way of processing. And Jayden Daniels, is the future of the NFL. He's a future of the position, and the future is bright when you see what a rookie can do coming in and beating a team that was the heavy favored, like the Detroit Lions. And I'm excited to see what his future brings. I had him pegged as an early star, so I love seeing the fruits of my labor, come to fruition, and seeing a prospect like that really come to life here. And those that invested really hit here. And Jeremiah, 53 minutes in, we think we hit a really awesome show. Over 460 people watching us live here right now. So shout out to everybody in there. Appreciate everybody from tuning in to, the Player Profiler Now channel. We are here with news now. So check us out on the website at playerprofiler.com /news. You're going to see a ton of new content coming out every day. We're posting articles. Every latest and breaking news article is now up to date there. And be sure to follow us on our YouTube channel, because we're just a few subscribers shy of that 1,000 mark. And it'd be really great if everybody could just hit that subscribe, get us up there over the 1,000 mark. We're really hoping to get that, before the draft, and potentially before the Senior Bowl. If we could get that, that would be a huge, huge milestone for us here at the Player Profiler Now desk. And man, great season, great content coming through here on the Now channel. So be sure everything now is happening. So we'll be here giving you all the latest news. Jeremiah, what else do you have before we?
So we have, go out. The national championship game should be this Saturday. It should not be tonight. Big blown missed opportunity year over year. You think Costco's busy on Super Bowl weekend? It would be insane to have the college football, which they play all season, on Saturday. That's just something I had to get off my chest. But you're going to have Saturday free. You might as well load up on some content. catch up on your podcasts, rest up if you need to, go to the gym, do anything that's good for your health. Sunday, you got 3 and 6:30 p.m. The beauty is Underdog should last year, if it's the same time frame, they dropped their big board tournament. So we should be getting soon 2025 full ADP. And that's just going to be content to consume between our rookies, where things are falling with ADP across the board in best ball. We are in dynasty season. We're doing all these rookie mocks, and you're figuring out, tabulating ADP. We're talking about landing spots. We talked about the Minnesota Vikings getting a running back. This is that time to really sharpen. People talk about, hey, taking time off. Find other ways to recharge while you're still consuming content, because you can really gain an edge. And I'm telling you, when you're on Labor Day weekend or late August, anywhere where you're doing your drafts, you just feel there's nothing like being so prepared at your laptop or your phone when you're drafting against your league mates. You just have the thorough homework, and it all starts right now, this time in January, where it is dead, where people tune out. It's absolutely worth it. It's funny, I get recharged every time we get to this part of the season, because while there isn't the season, this content we can consume year round. The NFL really is something special. And the way we have this game, all these games within games, we have redraft, we have dynasty, you get the year round element. And I would just say all these games inform each other. If you're doing a little bit of bets, it sharpens you up for your weekly decisions. If you're doing some dynasty, it's going to help with best ball markets. Just a lot. I'm so pumped. I could just keep going. Thank you everybody for being here tonight. We will see you next week.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.